When World War II ended in 1945, the world saw the collapse of one of history's most destructive regimes. The men who built the system were hunted, captured, or forced to answer for their actions. But behind those powerful figures were women who had lived close to power, women who attended private dinners, women who lived inside luxury homes, women who stood near the most powerful figures of Nazi Germany. For years, many believed they could disappear into ordinary life. They believed the world would move forward and forget their connection to the people they had stood beside. But history had a different plan, because when the war ended, their names remained connected to one of the darkest chapters in modern history, and the world wanted answers. Who were these women? What did they know? What did they see? And what happened when the world they knew suddenly disappeared? One of the most visible women connected to the Nazi leadership was Emmy Göring. Before the fall of Germany, she lived a life surrounded by privilege. Her husband, Hermann Göring, was one of the highest-ranking figures in Nazi Germany and the head of the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force. Their lifestyle reflected power, wealth, and influence. They lived in a large estate. They collected expensive possessions. They moved through a world where status seemed permanent. Their homes represented success and authority. Their names carried influence. Their positions seemed protected. But in 1945, everything changed. Germany collapsed. The government and military structure they had known disappeared. The powerful families who once lived behind guarded gates suddenly faced a completely different reality. Properties were taken. Possessions disappeared. The symbols of status were gone. The same world that had provided comfort vanished almost overnight. After the war, Emmy Göring faced a different life. The luxury was gone. The protection of power was gone. And the name that once opened doors became a burden she carried for the rest of her life. Another woman connected to Hitler's inner circle was Gretl Braun. She was the younger sister of Eva Braun, the woman closest to Adolf Hitler. For years, the Braun family existed near the center of Hitler's private world. Gretl married Hermann Fegelein, a member of Hitler's inner circle. This connection placed her close to events happening at the highest levels of Nazi Germany. But when the war ended, the people around Hitler were forced to face the consequences of the world they had been part of. Gretl survived the war. Unlike many others around Hitler, she lived for decades afterward. But her connection to that period followed her. The questions surrounding people from that era remained. How much did they know? How much did they understand? And how much could they have done differently? History rarely remembers only the powerful. Sometimes it remembers the people standing beside them. Gerda Bormann was the wife of Martin Bormann, one of Hitler's closest political figures. Her life was deeply connected to the Nazi leadership circle. She became known for raising a very large family, 10 children during one of the most turbulent periods in European history. But after Germany's defeat, the world she knew disappeared. The powerful networks around her collapsed. The privileges connected to her family name were gone. The post-war years were difficult. Many former members of the Nazi elite struggled to rebuild their lives in a completely changed Germany. Gerda Bormann's story became another example of how quickly a world built around power could disappear. A life once connected to influence ended in hardship. Inside the homes of Germany's leaders, life continued behind closed doors. There were dinners, conversations, private gatherings, moments that looked ordinary from the outside. But history would later examine those rooms differently, because the people sitting at those tables were connected to decisions that affected millions of lives. After the war, many claimed they did not know the full reality of what was happening. They said they were distant from the decisions. They said they had no control. They said they were unaware. But historians continued searching for documents, memories, and testimony to understand the role of people who lived near power, because silence around power can also become part of history. The women around Hitler were not the leaders who created Nazi Germany, but their stories remain part of the larger history of that era. They lived close to power. They benefited from that world, and when that world collapsed, they had to face what came after. The mansions disappeared. The influence disappeared. The protection disappeared. but the records remained. Because history remembers not only those who make decisions, but also those who stand close enough to witness them. And sometimes the biggest question is not, because history remembers not only those who make decisions, but also those who stand close enough to witness them. And sometimes the biggest question is not only, what did they do, but also, what did they see, and what did they choose not to see? History remembers everything. Because history remembers not only those who make decisions, but also those who stand close enough to witness them. And sometimes the biggest question is not only, what did they do, but also, what did they see, and what did they choose not to see? History remembers everything.